Hello, everybody. So, we're continuing on the last episode that touched up on the. Oh, sorry about that. Have to remove that video. Okay. The woes of streaming to multiple places. So, we are going to continue the last episode, which we brought up this to dos app that's based off a starter created by someone else. And we had some issues bringing it up because it was writing the URL incorrectly. So we figured that out. And we ended at trying to figure out why the source maps were not being generated. So we're going to continue on that same train of thought. Please excuse my nose. I sound also so stuffy. So let's switch over to the desktop. Making sure that's up and running okay. So here we are in the DevTools screen. Chrome DevTools. Notice how there's only this here. Which I should see more folders here that map to the actual original sources. So let's go ahead and show you how that looks like if I generate the production build. So I'm gonna do run npm run build npm run start. This will generate the production build, which does show the source maps. So that was throwing me off because I would assume that I could see the source maps if I'm in dev mode, but in this case I was not able to see it. So that's where I came up with the idea. Well, let me check how it behaves when I generate production assets. So that's what we did right now. It's running on a different port. As you can see here. Let me bring this over to that side. It's running on port 5000, and this one's running on port 3000. So we're going to switch over to this one, which runs on port 5000. I'm going to refresh. And let's see what's going on here. Source map detected. But it's not showing it, which is interesting. Could it be the service worker or something? Like, I'm wondering if this is caching it or something. What's this? Okay. I'm gonna clear all the storage. How does this work? I've never done it this way. So I'm gonna put this full screen. See if there's another button in here. Oh, there it goes. Okay, clear site data. Let's see if that makes a difference. Whoa. Interesting. Now it seems like it's not even running. Okay, let's try to do build and run again. All right. Now let's see if this builds. Wow. Okay. One other strange issue. Let's look at the console. Oh. Yeah. Here goes that unexpected token thing again. And it's showing okay. Yes. Instead of serving JavaScript, it's serving HTML. So we solved this yesterday. And there it goes. Remember how I said that there's this, I think it's production URL. Let's see. Index. Public URL. Okay, so there's this public URL environment variable that's used to generate the URL to the assets. And if it doesn't exist, it uses React scripts, I'm assuming, picks up the value here. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to change this to that. I'm going to regenerate the assets. By the way, if you're not already following me, go ahead and follow me in whichever place that you're actually seeing the stream right now, and you get more of these streaming videos and get the notifications. Okay, so that created the assets. Now we're going to refresh. Okay, here we go. Aha. Notice how this one has a folder here. It's in orange. Oh. Interesting. So. Oh, okay, here it goes. It still has the orange folder, but I guess this one's specific to the CSS. So you drill down into the folder static JS, and then you notice that these are orange. So these indicate folders that point to your original source files. Basically, it's mimicking the folders that show up when you're actually writing your code. So it's like here, app, components, containers, hooks, but these don't actually exist in the generated assets. That's where the whole source maps comes in. What this does is it allows you to, instead of seeing like the compiled JavaScript that's cross-browser compatible and really hard to read, it allows you to debug the JavaScript just as it looks like when you're actually developing. So we want to see how this behaves. So some of the things that I want to see is what happens, um, you know, when I press enter. I know that for sure if I type in a to-do, get laundry, and I press enter, it adds it to the to-do list. So I'm going to work backwards and see how that actually works in the source code. So first I want to drill down to the DOM and see what is it using here. Okay, it's using an input and it's called new to-do. All right. Do I have a React tools? I thought I had React tools. I guess I only have the so Redux is only going to tell me just the reducer type actions that are being sent. That's not exactly what I want to see. So let's see what we have here on the store. I want to see the actual tree React developer tools. Oh, I do have it, but where is it? Oh, maybe it just... Wow, it's been a while since I've used it. Components. Okay. Yeah. So, the Chrome DevTools has this elements tab. You know, if you've used it a lot, you know what you're looking at. But if you want to see the actual components in React, if you use the React Developer Tools for Chrome, you can get the actual components that are being used. And just like in, you can select an element here, and that'll drill down to the DOM element. You could do the same and it'll drill down to the React component. Sorry, not this one. Use this one here. Click, there goes the to-do list. So let's see what's going on with the to-do list. There's an input on enter. Look at that. There's an on enter callback. Now let's look for that. I don't know if this is smart enough to go back to the source. Can it? Let's see. Go to definition. Oh my goodness. It actually did. Wow. Okay, I learned something new. And it's using the source maps version. Impressive. I still want to go back and see where use on enter is being called. So I'm going to go back to my source files here. Do a double shift. And by the way, I'm using WebStorm. So now I want to do if you're on a Mac, it'll be the command key. If I do a command click on here, I'll see where these are referenced. So there's a to-do item, there's a to-do list on add to-do. So I probably want to go to here. Okay. Got it. Okay. The use on enter is use callback. I've never seen use callback before. So this is it seems like a special React hook. So let's look into that. Use callback hook API. And what do we get when we use callback? It's memoized. Okay. Pass an inline callback an array of dependencies. Use callback will return a memoized version of the callback. This is useful when passing callbacks to optimize child components that rely on reference equality, prevent unnecessary renders. And I'm assuming that would also mean that if you type the same, well, I'm throwing this, I'm like talking out loud. If you use the same value, then it won't create a new to-do. Let's see. Use enter, and then this is the actual yeah, hook. Okay. If a new value. So I'm going to see what happens if I use the same exact words. So I'm going to say laundry. And then I'm also going to type in laundry again. Okay. So I guess that part I did not understand too well. I thought that perhaps because it was memoized, it wouldn't do the second laundry because I'm using the same exact value. But apparently that's not how it worked. So to drill down, I've been using that word a lot, drill. I want to actually debug this. So let's look for the to-do list, and the to-do list is on the containers. So we go back to DevTools and click on containers, to-do list, and we're looking at line 56. So line 56, we're gonna put here 55. We're gonna put a breakpoint right there. Just click. And now I'm going to type in laundry. I'm going to press enter. It'll pause there. And now I got a new value. New value equals laundry. Okay. Oh. Interesting. Okay, also, I've noticed that this just means it doesn't have a value. But this part of the hook is, if I understand this correctly, is if this value has changed, then execute the hook. Let's see. So let's look more at the dependencies. Returns a memorized version of the state. The only changes if one of the dependencies has changed. The array of dependencies is not passed as arguments to the callback. Okay, that doesn't matter to me. So what's throwing me off is, okay, so if we go back at, You know, it's funny is that I went off on a tangent trying to figure out the whole issue where dev was not generating a source map, and now I'm all the way here. Welcome to the rabbit hole of development. This is very common. But anyways, we continue. My question is, if this hook only executes if the dependency has changed, in what sense has this changed because I'm using the same value? Perhaps there's a new instance, so it's not looking at the actual value, it's looking at the actual instance of new value. Maybe that's one thing to look for. Which in that case, I'll probably put a breakpoint here to maybe understand that a little bit more. If it'll let me. So perhaps I have to put in 53 instead of 52. We'll see. So this one just says it exists. So it'll actually go to the next line. And notice how I skipped over to 57. I've seen this happen commonly when source maps are not generated too well. Because I would expect it to go 55. And let me see that I made sure. Yeah. I clicked on step over. So it should have gone to 56 and then 57. There's a breakpoint here, which I don't care about this one, so I'm going to let that one go. And it paused there, probably because it did a new render because of the new laundry value. Now the new value is blank. Ah, I see. So that would explain why use on enter executes. Makes a lot of sense. Okay. Because set new value is set to blank, an empty string. Not at this point, new value is an empty string. So if I type in anything that's not an empty string, it'll execute this, which makes me believe if I just press enter, this will not. I'm wondering if it won't even execute the hook itself, which means it wouldn't even enter 55. So let's see if that's true. Okay. It's still entered. I'm gonna have to look into that. Why did it not honor the actual dependency? Because from what I understand, this should not execute because the value is the same. It's new value, if you notice right here, is an empty string. And it hasn't changed from the previous value. So something is going on there. Maybe I do not understand too well. I'm passing. Okay. Function and do something. Yep. Okay, I'm going to shelve that for the moment. Let's move on over to the whole issue where the dev was not generating the source maps. And like I mentioned in the last video, this is important because if I want to be able to have a tight feedback loop and develop quickly, I want to be able to use or to use my Chrome Developer debug tools when I need to solve just a really difficult bug. So yesterday I kind of skipped the whole process where you see me thinking out loud. So I'm gonna shortcut that a little bit, and I'm gonna show you the actual, if I could find it here. Yes. So this GitHub issue gave me an idea about what was going on. So this GitHub issue said, oh, it's there's a problem with .8, and we're talking about create a React app. If I'm not mistaken, let's look for .8 here. Oh yeah, or before .8, it will enable source maps. And see, I don't really know what version I'm using, but it made me think, maybe there is a problem with the version of create React app that I'm using. So I looked at the package.json, and what I did was, first I said, oh, okay, so I'm assuming this is old, so I'm gonna bump that up to whatever the latest is. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that. I'll do npm update React scripts. I'm gonna let that update. So I went ahead and did that. You're gonna see what happens once I do this. And see, this whole thing is a process, right? You just keep doing one step after another. And you might not know what's gonna happen. So you just have to keep trying small increments at a time. And eventually you'll get your answer, right? If you don't get your answer, that's when you kind of start, like what I do. I sometimes reach out different places. Might be Stack Overflow. It might be someone that I know that has worked with a particular technology. But for the most part, I try to figure it out myself. So right here, it's just going and compiling some packages. Apparently, this has this FS events. It needs to be built for my specific architecture. It's not just pure JavaScript, so there has to be some C++ or C that has to be compiled, so I'm gonna let that go. That's why it's taking a while to finish. Okay, so now I will try to run npm run dev, I think it is, and then I get this error. This error says that it's using Babelgest 23.6.0, and I need to use 24.9.0. It also says, it gives you some hints in here. Don't try to install it manually. Your package manager does it automatically. And then it gives you how to fix this. So first thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to delete package.json. Like it said, oops. Oh, okay. Yep, so I'm going to delete package.json. I am going to remove this reference to jest in here. I'm going to save that. I'm going to completely kill the node modules folder. Alright. Because it says get rid of the node modules, get rid of lock, remove Babelgest. Mine was called jest, but I removed it anyways. And then it says do npm install. So I'm going to do npm install. And we're going to go through the same process again. This one in particular, it's now going to install the correct version of Babelgest. So we're going to let that go for now. Okay, in the meantime, let's look at some of the source code here. Kind of dig in how it's all like pulled together. So this is the source code we're looking at. There is an index file. So index. From that index, it's importing some JavaScript CSS. Then there's app being pulled in from app/app. There's a service worker. Then we get that root in there. That's mounting app on that DOM element here and rendering it. Oh, looks like it's done here. All right. So now let's try running npm run dev. And notice how before it didn't have any source maps here. There's no orange folders under here. But now, if you see under this folder, there are source maps. So slash, what's React hooks? Interesting. I don't know why I did it that way. But, oh, okay, yeah. So I needed to go all the way down, React, source app. So now in dev mode, source maps are being generated. And like I said, the whole issue was because React scripts was on an older version. If you saw here, the version was 2.4.1. Let's see. say 2.1.5. So apparently between 2.1.5 and 3.4.1, that was fixed. You know what version? I don't know. But the most important thing is that bringing it up to the latest version worked out. Now that doesn't always help, because now, for instance, if you've had something on a very early version and you update a package to the latest version, things will break, and then you have to migrate it to the latest version. But in this case, I didn't have any issues, or so, or so I think that there's not going to be any issues. Let's see. If I type in laundry and I press enter, it's there. If I check mark it, yep, looks like everything works. So works pretty well. So I didn't have any particular issues there. Okay. So let's continue on. My next thing here is I'm gonna go and look back at does this actually pause at the line that I'm assuming it would pause at. So before, you saw when I did the production assets, it did not pause in line 56. So I'm wondering, after I updated that package of React scripts, and now I'm in dev mode, I wonder if it will pause right there. So let's do that. We're gonna hit enter here. Okay, we're gonna step over, and there you go. You notice how now it actually broke on line 56, whereas when I was in production mode, it just skipped right over. And here's a little tip, because I mentioned before that there's a problem with source maps, but this is not even particular to Chrome DevTools. I've seen this happen in other debugging tools. Like, for instance, I've been debugging interactively like this for, let's say, over 10 years in different languages. Like, I'll give an example. In PHP, with remote debugging, which means the code that you want to debug is running on a server, it's not on your computer. The way that works is that it matches your local working directory with the code on the server. So sometimes you're trying to debug something and the code on your local working directory is not up to date with the code that's on the server. So for instance, like if you have 101 lines on the server for the same file that's on your local working directory, but the one that's on your local working directory is 100 lines, not 101, and you're debugging it, you're gonna see it stop at the wrong line. So perhaps, I'm not sure, but perhaps that was kind of what was happening, where the source maps for some reason were not being generated correctly. But right now, since we updated React scripts and I'm running in dev mode, it seems like it's actually breaking at the right point. So right now, I'm gonna take a quick lunch break and continue, like, let's say in 20 to 30 minutes. So I'll catch you guys in the meantime. So I'm gonna switch up my little words here for my away scene. And my away scene. All right. So 20 to 30 minutes. I'll be back, okay? now you guys can hear me. And yeah, if you're not following me, go ahead and follow me. That's my Twitch handle, Twitter handle, and Facebook, and YouTube. You'll see that there's bit.ly/George Cologne Consulting. That's because I need subscribers, and I can't get a vanity domain URL if I don't have a certain amount of subscribers. So please go ahead and subscribe to my YouTube channel, bit.ly/George Cologne Consulting. And then eventually, once I get my vanity URL, it'll be youtube.com/George Cologne Consulting. But in the meantime, bit.ly will be the URL. Okay, so we wanted to figure out, or I wanted to figure out what was going on with the dependency here, where the dependency did not change in value, the previous value. Excuse me. From what I could tell. And it still executed this effect. So, I am wondering if source maps were also generated for the React sources. So I'm going to see if that's true or not. So let's see. Here. Okay. So I am going to drill down into use enter. Use on enter and the use callback function. So I'll put a little debug breakpoint there. I'll put it here. So let's do that again. I want it specifically to break right there. So do laundry. Type in laundry. Oh, what's going on here? It's not taking any of my input. Are we stuck on a breakpoint? No, we're not. Is there a problem? Maybe if I refresh. Is it even running? Yes, it is. React hook use callback was passed. A dependency listed as not an array literal. This means we can't statically verify whether you've passed correct dependencies. Dependency callback either included or removed the dependency array. These are interesting. So I don't know why this is hung. I'm going to kill the dev server. Refresh this. Which should have shown. Oh, that would make a lot of sense. Remember that I said we're working on the dev version? Well, this is the dev version, which is running on port 3000 and not 5000. So now let's put the breakpoint right there. let this one run. Ooh, okay, use callback. We are right here. I'm going to enter into the use callback. Well, will it? It should. Yep, enter. Use callback. Okay. And this is source mapped. And then what are dependencies? I have 0 dependencies, and the error message said something was passed a dependency that is not an array literal. Let's see if that's true. Use on enter. Then what is inputs? I want to know what inputs is. Inputs should be an array literal. So look at the dependencies. If I go back to use enter, use on enter, I can see what this is. It says it is an array. Let's go back one more. So apparently seems like there is an array literal. So since this is compiled down JavaScript, I wonder if there's an issue at the compiled version. This is going to be a little bit difficult to find. So I'm going to go down here. Hopefully I can find the new value. So this is going to be terrible. I'm going to look for new value. New value. So it is an array literal, even in the compiled version. So that's throwing me off. Let's go back over here. So I don't know if this is an old error or not. I'm gonna let this run first. Just let it go. Let it go, let it go. Sorry, I needed to do that. I just had to. Just had to. Alright, let me see if I have the same errors again. This, I'm assuming, could be a false positive, so I'm not going to worry too much about that. I'll drill down here, go to the use callback, drill down there, if I can. Okay, cool. Use callback, check depths are array dev. Alright. Continue to here. I'll step in. Looks like the shortcut is semicolon or F11. I could do F11. Step in F11, and then step over is F10. So just checking if that's an array. Let's see if that throws an error. Yeah, so it's fine. So there must be some issue where at some point maybe an array is not being sent. I don't know, something. Okay, so I gotta go back to here. So what I'll do is I'll continue to here. Oh. Well, that's interesting. Inputs, the input array changed. Perhaps that's one of the reasons why it keeps getting called. And it's not memoized. Okay, so I'll do it again. Very interesting. Now it's a different value for the dependencies. Just an empty string. And before it was an object with the value of laundry and some other things in there. Okay, so let's drill that down to callback again. Drill down to here. Where so didn't catch the sources for the use callback. And that'll be a bit difficult to read. Yeah. Yeah, there's no way I can read all that. Just no way. Okay, back to over here. Let it play. Okay. Let's loot. Huh. Now that's very interesting. Use on enter keeps getting called for every key up. So why is this happening? I'm assuming this could be because this keeps on. Oh. Yes. Okay, I think this is starting to make a little bit more sense. I'm getting a little bit comfortable here. Okay. So, for every key up, I'm not even gonna call it key up because doesn't matter at this point. We're using hooks, and the specific state for the input is continually being changed. Yeah. If you notice, for every state change, new value changes. So if I do, for instance, I'll take this breakpoint out. I add a new letter, U. Is it not picking it up? What's going on here? Oh, okay. I'll probably need to put a debug breakpoint right there. U. Okay, U. I have an LAU. So now, new value is LAU. Okay, fine. And then if I do an N, new value is LAUN, which means in this case, the dependency changed from the previous value, which should make it should make the actual callback execute. Okay, so now let's go back to use on enter, which uses a use callback hook, and it's, if I'm not mistaken, if I start from scratch, first I should see an empty string. Then when I type L, inputs will be an array with the first item being L. If I add an A, now there'll be an LA, which means that the dependency changed, and it'll execute the callback here. But since I didn't hit enter, it won't actually do much. So let's check if that's true. I'm gonna refresh. Okay. So first, we have an empty string. Interesting that it shows this second dependency of new value. At some point, I probably need to check what that, where's that coming from? Oh, there's even more code there. Got it. So there's another call to use on enter. That makes sense. Okay, and then the to do is being sent to that. Okay. So there isn't like any magic in there. The to do item component is actually using the use on enter hook as well. So now let's go back to here. And like I said, we should have a empty string. So if I do L, now I should have an L here. I'm gonna hover over inputs. Come on, inputs. Help me out here. Inputs. Interesting. Okay. Maybe it loses the scoping. So let's see if that's part of the event object. You know, not exactly what I wanted to see. I wanted to see more of the input from the callback. Keyboard event, I don't really care too much about. Not at this point. Fiber node, and I'm assuming that's specific to React. This might be interesting. Memwise props. No. So I'm gonna stop at this point. I'm assuming that it loses the scoping here, perhaps perhaps because it's an arrow function, maybe, don't know. So I'm gonna drop it here. I'm gonna drop that breakpoint for now. So the input is L. That's interesting how many times it's actually re-rendering. Don't know what's going on there. But maybe that might be for another time. So now I'm putting A. Now you notice it's LA here. So previously it was L, which would mean that this this callback should be called because there was a change in the dependency. So that's starting to make sense for me. And if I let that call the actual callback, let's see, LA. Doesn't seem like it dropped in. Maybe I came too late into the picture. Let's see if I do an AU. Yes. So callback. See, at this point, I'm not exactly sure why it called that. Did it even actually check the dependency? At what point does the callback check the dependency? That would be my question. That's not very apparent at this moment. But in any case, I'll let that one go for now. I wonder if that's why at this point inputs is not available. Maybe because it's calling it outside of the call stack from first where when it called use on enter. I don't know. See, because now it's here. If you notice that it called use callback first, and now it's in the component where then it calls use on enter, which then is going to go back to call use callback. And this call stack looks completely different from the one that I saw before. Or perhaps maybe the previous use callback was queued up somewhere and then it executed. Let's see. LAU. So I'm going to put an N. There's definitely something really interesting going on there. I just have to wrap my mind around how use callback works. And it's not very clear. That's the interesting thing about React. And many other libraries. There's a lot of magic going on behind the scenes, and unless you're like really down in the nitty gritty, things like this can be difficult to debug. Okay. Notice how this call stack looks like. There's like an execute dispatch, invoke guarded callback. So all running events and batch. This is what makes me think that this was kind of like batched up for a future call. And then if I, for instance, do this, now it's here. And now it's LAUN. Which throws me off because it didn't seem like it cared about the dependency. It was just like it executed it immediately instead of queuing it up depending on a condition. So I mean, this would be the part that in my head would be, oh, we're queuing this up on a condition. And the condition is, did the inputs change? And see, this part that makes a ton of sense to me. Now that second re-render did not make sense to me. Something, or there could have been something lower in the to-do list that did like a set something. Or maybe on new value change did something. Let's see. Yeah, I'm not too sure what happened there and why it re-rendered. Okay, so let's go back to the call stack. I'm gonna hit play. Or it could be that I don't understand too well the concept of the callback. Let's look back at the callback again. Passes an inline callback. Use callback will return a memoized version of the callback that only changes if one of the dependencies has changed. Memoized callback. So this is the special callback. Okay. Use callback. So the memoized callback should be returned here. And so each time, okay, I'm wondering if this might be the problem. Each time that I'm calling use on enter, I'm actually technically redefining that callback. That could be it, not sure. Because if I'm in fact redefining this callback, then wouldn't I be, every time that I'm calling use on enter and I'm redefining this use callback method, wouldn't I be going against the fact that it's not memoized anymore because I'm redefining it? Okay. I'm gonna do a quick bio break and then I'll be back. All right, I'm back. So in essence, what I'm doing here is kind of showing you how I go through and use Chrome Debugger to go backwards and see what's going on under the hood. What I was trying to check was how does use callback behave. Um, there's React Dev Tools packend, and I'm not 100% sure where this is coming from. This might be my actual Chrome tools, because if it is, and let me see if that's true, then yeah. I don't want to be debugging that. I want to actually see what's the code for use callback. So I want to see if by any chance there's some way of getting to that code. Callback. There's part of that code. Apply. There's the callback. Okay. So let's get to the first call to use callback. And we're going to step in here and dispatcher that use callback. I want to see if by any chance I can get into there. Okay. I can get all the way here. So I will do so. Oh, seems like that didn't work out too well. Let's try that again. I'm gonna put a breakpoint in here. Okay, where is this update callback? If by chance I can't, do a breakpoint, what I'm gonna try to do is put a breakpoint here, but I'll come back right over here and do a step in. Okay, cool. I got to the update callback. So let's go all the way back up to call stack. So callback gets called. What's the input here? Well, you know what? I don't care about this one because this one's from that to-do list. Yeah, I'll let this one play. LANUD, that's the one that I care about most. Let's put the R. Update callback. Okay. Let that one go in. Alright. So is this what I want? That is the question. What are the depths here? This is probably not the one that I want. What I want is the LAUNDR. Okay. Okay, so I want to just completely ignore the rest of these breakpoints. So what I'll do is deactivate, press play, let that deactivate. Then I'm going to activate the breakpoints again. Then I'm going to remove this R. See those breakpoints being hit again. Okay, so what are my depths here? My depth is a function. So where is this coming from? Use callback. And this is probably where that mystery call is coming from. There's a force update. Okay, first a to-do list. It uses a router. But maybe I need to go a little bit farther down here. Dispatch discrete event. And what is the discrete event? Delete content backward. So that triggered an event that caused the cascade. So that event triggered, I guess, an update which got queued up, and then it did, what's the unit of work here? The to-do list. Call the to-do list, call the router, forced the update. And it called the callback. This is probably a callback from for something else. It's not for this actual, I'm assuming. So it's not for this actual component. Or at least that's what I'm trying to understand. So I'm going to break into this. See, I don't really care about this much. Arguments. Yeah, I can't see who that is. So I'll just let this one run. What I really want to know, I want to see the dependencies showing LAUND. And that's from the to-do list. Now, why was this one empty? There goes the LAUND. For to-do list. Okay. To-do list. Use input. where's the use input? Use input. Oh, right before the use on enter. Okay. So use input. It does a set value, which normally I've seen that many times. If you do a set something on the set, you set the value of the hook, it'll many times trigger a re-render. Use callback. Okay, so here use oh, I see this call here. There is no dependency being sent. And that would explain why this error is throwing back for use input. Does nothing when called with only one argument. Did you forget to pass an array of dependencies? Okay, so I'm gonna go through all that. Let that finish. So use I kind of forgot, if you give an array to a hook, that means just check it all the time. And I don't remember what's the difference between doing that and not giving it any dependencies. So let's say use, is it state? I'll just use Xstate. Empty array versus undefined. Maybe undefined. Or maybe I'll just look for empty array. Is it use effect that I use state, initial state? Let's look back at the hooks API using state. Or is it use effect that has a dependency? Yes, it's use effect. So what I'll do is here, I'll change this to use effect. Empty array. If you want to run an effect and clean it up only once on mount and unmount, you can pass an empty array as a second argument. This tells React that your effect doesn't depend on any values from props or state, so it never needs to rerun. This isn't handled as a special case. It follows directly from how the dependencies always work. If you pass an empty array, the props and state inside the effect will always have their initial values, while passing empty array as a second argument is closer to the familiar component did mount and component will amount mental model. There are usually better solutions to avoid rerunning effects too often. Also, don't forget that React defers running use effect until after the browser has painted So doing extra work is less of a problem. Okay, so if this means only do it once, then that's not the effect that I want. This is something that I want to continually check. So yeah, I don't want this, but you know, for the purpose of seeing how this behaves, I'll add that in there. Laundry. Okay, let's add in the breakpoints. I'm gonna ignore these again, and use callback, use input. Let's go to the use input. That'll be under hooks, use input, and activate. We're going to set the breakpoint there. Okay. A. Okay. For the moment, I'm gonna look at these, look for all these breakpoints that I have set up, and I'm gonna disable some of them. What I'm gonna do is, the one that I'll care about is the one here, use input, which will be this one on the list. I'm gonna uncheck all these for the moment being, and then let this go. Okay, so as you can see here, this isn't being called. I'm assuming it only got called once. So let's change dependencies to nothing, which would, I think that means call all the time. So let's see, L. Let's see. Change. Now that's interesting. That didn't do anything. Maybe because I needed to press enter. No. So when does onChange get called? I'm gonna refresh just in case. That was like a hot module reload and it didn't really work as expected. Oh, that's probably what it was. Okay. So notice that right now for every value that's being called. But if I change it to an empty array, then I think this should only be called once. I think. Seems like it's not getting called at all. If you want to run an effect and clean it up only once. Okay. Let's go to use callback because that's what we're using. So hooks API reference, use callback. Only quality to prevent unnecessary renders. The array of dependencies is not okay. I think the dependencies argument for use callback behaves a little bit different than for use effect. What if I change this to value instead? Where we're saying, oh well, if the value changes, then call set value. Refresh. Okay, L. A. Still. L. A. So there's something wrong in my understanding of how use callback works. One other thing to shelf. I need to figure that out at some point. But it's good to see, these breakpoints getting hit or not. That way I can see how it behaves, and then I can ask someone that knows more about the internals of how this behaves. Why it's behaving that way. So as you can see, when I don't give it the dependencies, then it's just calling it every single time. Yep. All right. So I've shown you kind of like the ins and outs of the using the how I use Chrome, the Chrome debugger. The watch list, the call stack, how you can go through all the call stacks, all the call stacks, and inspect the variables in there, and the breakpoints, how you can turn them on and off or ignore some. Stepping in and over a function. I didn't get into stepping out, but for the most part, I do step over, step in sometimes. I don't do step as much. I just do step over a lot of times. And continue. But if you use these different parts of the debugger, it'll help you to understand a lot more about what's going on behind the scenes. So I'll wrap up this episode. I hope that you've gotten some good insight of how to use the debugger. And then next time we'll start looking more into how to shift this over to using Xstate, and we'll look at using Xstate, use statement, no, use machine. It'll be my first time using use machine, but I've used Xstate outside of React, which is great. So, all right. If you haven't subscribed already, go ahead and subscribe to my channel, whether it be on YouTube, Twitch, follow me on Twitter, on LinkedIn, wherever you're seeing this. So I'll catch you guys